Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Bryn Evans, and this is Listening to Teacher Evans na Chivo, the channel where I speak and you practice your English listening. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about my time here in Brazil, or at least the first year. I've lived in Brazil for 2 years now, but today I'm going to be talking more about the first year, my first impressions, and what happened in the first year of being here. I live in the interior de Sao Paulo, like I previously said. Interior, I don't really know how to translate interior. People would probably say countryside, but I don't think countryside is really accurate in my case. I'd probably describe it as that I live in a town 3 hours away from the city. It's an industrial town. There's 3 or 4 big international companies, a few factories. There's a lot of jobs to be had for the residents of this town. It was one of the reasons that we decided to move here, along with a few false promises, swayed our decisions, but overall it was to be close to my wife's family. I think that was the biggest reason why we decided to move to this town rather than trying our lives somewhere else. It's not such a small place, 160,000 residents, although it doesn't feel like that. Come Sunday, there's not a lot to do. There's a few shopping centres, but really there need only be one, because the 2 or 3 shopping centres that we have here all have the same shops, so it's pretty much the same thing. But it's not such the small town in the countryside that you can imagine. It is pretty big. Even though it's of a fair size, I still had a bit of a culture shock when I arrived. Nothing negative as such. I just had to remind myself that I was in South America, that I'd well and truly left Europe, left Spain, even though I used to live on an island and we were a bit disconnected from other countries. But it's still a little bit more further forward than some areas in South America. I just had to sit myself down and think, look, you've moved. You're no longer in Europe. You're in South America. Things are different. Didn't take too long to get used to that, but it was a conversation that I needed to have with myself, that those European normalities were now far away. All in all, I'd say the first year of being here was a pretty rough road for me. My time here was pretty tough, filled with those moments where I've sat and just asked myself, what have I done? You see, we'd planned, and even when we arrived, it was always going to be temporary. A year or 2 max, nothing more. But within the first few weeks, it became clear that that simply wasn't going to be the case. That was a difficult pill to swallow, like we'd say in English. The help that was offered to us before arriving, when we were deciding to move, was just in fact a ploy to get us here. To what means in actual reason, I'm still unsure. But the words that we innocently, naively believed weren't exactly true. And before I knew it, I was wondering how I was ever going to escape. Nothing that I did was ever right, nor good enough. I really was naive to think that life was going to be so easy here, just how certain people had told me it was going to be. I tried to be positive, but at the darkest of times, it seemed near impossible. I was unemployed, without any money, living under a roof that wasn't mine, unable to admit how I was really feeling to my family. A long way away from everything that I had ever known. Shocked that this was my new reality. Don't get me wrong, none of this had anything to do with Brazil. It was more down to my situation at the time. It wasn't all negative and sad, however. I think Brazil as a country and culture, ironically, may actually have been the thing that saved me and kept me going. The new experiences, the tiny details that probably most people take for granted. I'm someone that likes to try new things, new drinks and foods, go to new places. I remember the same day that I had arrived, my first day here in Brazil. After a near 18-hour journey with 2 cats through 3 countries, we arrived early on. It was about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning here in Brazil when we arrived. So we decided to go to the supermarket. The regret had already hit. Reality had sunk in within the first few hours of being here. So I wasn't my best. But even though I wanted to have a better look at the town, take a walk with my wife, and really see whether or not it was that bad. Now, it may be strange, but I've always been a fan of supermarkets. Yet in Spain, or at least in Tenerife, they were never very interesting. They sold the basics, what you needed to survive, a few new quirky things that the Spanish enjoyed, but they were never really aesthetically pleasing, should we say. But here, I remember walking around the fruits and vegetable section in awe. So many colours, all very well presented. I don't know if that's something that happens and occurs across Brazil or whether it was just the supermarket that I entered. But I remember it being incredible, something that I'd never seen before. So many different things that I'd never seen before. Even bananas. There were 4 or 5 different types, when my whole life, all I ever knew was one. In fact, that's a lie. I remember my mum buying me these tiny little bananas when I was younger in a certain supermarket in England. I must have only been about 6 or 7 at the time. I loved them. I adored these tiny little bananas. They were so different. They were sweeter than the normal ones that you find. But I remember eating them for a couple of months, but then they seemed to disappear. We could never find them again. I remember smiling and shouting over to my wife to come look when I thought I had found them here in Brazil. Telling my wife about my memories, how much I used to adore them. It turned out that the ones that I had found here, they were far from being the same. They were terrible, disgusting. We ended up throwing them away. I know you shouldn't throw food away, you should try and donate it or something like that. But their value was worth so much more than just their nutrition, as they had put a smile on my face, which would have been a rare occurrence in the months to come. It wasn't until I had removed myself from that situation and started to give English lessons, meeting people from all ways of life who were living across the world, in the USA, Texas, Boston, Florida, in Ireland, Dublin or Limerick, England and Scotland, Portugal and Spain, even all the way in Australia and New Zealand. I had lessons with people on a Tuesday when they were already getting ready to make their most of Wednesday, due to them being 14, 15 hours ahead. I think it showed me how big the world really is. Now I've learnt things that I never would have imagined that I would need to learn. I've met people that I would never have met. I really do think becoming an English teacher helped me gain my confidence back. It gave me an objective, as I was once again a leader, this time not of a team of chefs and waiters, but of my own future. Brazil really is a strange place. To an outsider, a foreigner like myself, It can be hard to understand at times, confusing, as it is a country where two extremes exist: poverty and great opportunity, although unfortunately one tends to cloud the other. Today, I see Brazil as a better option for my wife and I, even more than Europe. I think the possibility of making something out of yourself is much higher for us here in Brazil. But of course, if you just want a life where you work for someone until you are able to retire, then Europe is an incredible place, don't get me wrong. It really is about your priorities in life and what you really want for yourself and your family. Just think, I was a restaurant manager in a very busy location, and I think I can achieve so much more in the next few years here in Brazil, starting from zero, than I could ever have imagined achieving in Spain. Again, I don't see Brazil as my forever home, and I understand that the reality for a lot of people here is a lot worse than mine. But Brazil really isn't that bad. It just demands a lot of focus and determination, a few correct decisions, and probably a bit of luck, and you really can make yourself someone to be proud of. So guys, that's all for today's episode. Hopefully it helps you get one step closer to improving your English. Remember, little by little, you will get there. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and follow my socials, which are linked in the descriptions, for English tips. Have an amazing day, and until next time, ciao ciao.